Welcome to Unsightly Opinions. If you're new, my name's Tamara. Today, we are going to be talking about working when you're disabled. That's a huge topic to dive into, so I'm going to be dividing this video into two parts. Today's video is going to be focused on finding a career path, working to get employed, special interview tips if you're disabled, when to disclose your disability, how to work with an employer, or what is and is not legal for an employer to ask during the interview process. Part 2, coming out in a couple of days, will talk about working from home, finding other employment opportunities if you can't go into a workplace, the gig market, starting a business, and turning a hobby into something that's financially viable for you. If you find content like this helpful, please don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and leave me comments letting me know what you'd like to see next. With the preamble out of the way, let's dive into the content of today's video. Finding the right career. While the special focus is going to be for those who are blind or low vision, the information that I am going to be sharing is valuable no matter what type of disability you have, whether that's a physical disability, a mental health disability, a chronic health condition, or something else. When you're looking for a career or when you're trying to come back into the employment or into the job market after a long time, there are typically questions that I think you should ask yourself when you're looking for a career. Number 1, find a passion. What are you passionate about? If you weren't disabled, what would you want to be doing? Even if you don't have an answer to that question, if you can just get a sense of, I like physical work, or I like to be sedentary, or I like to do repetitive tasks, or I like to do intellectually stimulating activities. Make a list of what that is, and that can help narrow down your search to figuring out what's going to work for you with your disability. Number 2, education. What is your educational background? What formal experience do you have in education? That might be something like a GED, a high school diploma, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a doctoral degree, a certificate from a technical institute, whatever it may be. Keep track of what those are, and that may help you even if you don't like the career that you're in or you're not interested in pursuing. It might help you get employment temporarily in a field that you're trained in while you're looking for work somewhere else. Going back to school. The second part to that first question is, are you prepared to, or are you able to go back to school to pursue further education to move towards your career goal? Whether that's another certificate, a diploma, even a free course at your library that gives you some ability to show that you have training in a specific area. I know that formal education is not necessarily possible or the right fit for a lot of people, especially if you're coming back to the workplace or you're trying to get into the workplace in your late adulthood. Number 3, life experience. What experiences do you have from your life that might help you in your career search? Do you have skills in car engines? Do you have skills in sewing? Do you have skills in construction? What skills do you have that might not have a formal certificate or degree that may help you get into some form of employment? Try and make a list of all of those things, because you'd be surprised what kind of off-the-wall things that you might have done that might play into or be an asset to a career down the road. Number 4, transportation. Are you able to take transportation or some form of rideshare or ask a friend to get to wherever you need to work? If not, are you able to relocate to within walking distance of where you're working? What I have found is that when I am either a single bus ride or within walking distance of where I am currently employed, I am a lot happier. I can't spend half of my day commuting. It is not an efficient use of my time, and it is not going to help me be the best that I can be when I get to work. So try and take that into consideration when you're looking for different job options. Number 5, work history. What is your current work experience? What is your current work history? What type of experiences can you show somebody to tell them that you're going to be an asset to their company or business? If you're new or if you haven't been working, I've found volunteer work is a fantastic way not only to pad your resume, but show that you're an active member of your community and that you're trying to participate in the betterment of society. And it can help you get work experience to move into a career later. Number 6, hard limits. What are your current limitations, your hard limitations from your disability? We're going to talk about blindness specifically here, Do you have usable vision that is stable enough at your employer that you're going to be able to reliably use it? Do you have progressive vision loss? That means that you might be able to use your vision for a year and then you're going to have to relearn how to do everything again. Those are going to be very different things to try and accommodate for in a workplace. I want to note here that there are very, very few firm and hard rules when it comes to limitations because of disability. If you have the right training, if you are able to access the right accommodations, the only thing that truly limits you is the law, i.e. you're not going to be doing things like working for a rideshare company like Uber or Lyft. You're not going to be a truck driver. You're not going to be able to drive for work. At least most people who are blind or low vision are not going to be able to do those things. So take those considerations into effect. And I think that's where people tend to get hung up, is they believe that limitations are far greater than they need to be. There are a lot of different employment options that exist without needing to be able to drive.
Blind and visually impaired friendly careers.
Let's dive into a few different career options for people who are blind or low vision that are fantastic. We're going to start with a few that don't really require a lot of formal education, or maybe require brief education before you're able to work full time. The first thing that I would recommend, and I have worked in this field for a very long time, is in administrative work. So whether you're working as a secretary, a personal assistant, someone who does tasks for someone else to help take the load off of their workday, those are fantastic positions to get into because they can help you learn a variety of different skills, from computer work to spreadsheets to accounting to filing and management to how to run an office. There are skills that are transferable to a lot of different professions, and a lot of those types of positions don't require any formal education, provided you are willing to do the work. The second career that might not be very interesting to some people but is very accessible work is that of telemarketing, telephone customer support, technical support, customer service roles, something that is typically a desk job where you sit on the phone and answer people's concerns. The only limitation that I've run into is that sometimes some of the software that is used by those companies is not fully accessible, although that would not be a reason to stray away from that type of work. With those professions, most of the training that you're going to need is provided on the job, so you don't have to go to any special school or college before you apply for those types of positions. And typically there is some room for growth or higher positions as you move up the company's ladder. The third option here will require some education or some special skills in English or whatever language you speak, and that is as a freelance writer or editor. There are many different websites that will pay you to edit other people's work, essays, business proposals, whatever that may be, for grammar, punctuation, and sentence structure. If you have technical skills and usually a bachelor's degree in any field, you are qualified for that type of position. I know that can be difficult for some people with a screen reader, or if you're not used to writing, that can be a challenge, but it is a very viable option for a lot of people. The fourth option would be some form of transcription work, whether that's office transcription, file or data management, or medical transcription. I'm going to talk about medical transcription because that's what I am most familiar with. While there is typically education involved in transcription work, usually it is very accessible for those who are blind or low vision, especially in medical transcription, where you are simply typing out dictated notes from a physician or other medical professional. If you have good skills typing on the computer, if you are able to listen and use a screen reader or a screen magnifier at the same time, that's a relatively straightforward job for somebody who's blind or low vision. The next option would be some form of teaching or tutoring that will typically involve more education. Those spheres have a lot of accommodations available, and they're becoming more and more digital every year. I know many blind and visually impaired professors, teachers, educators who are very successful and are able to accommodate their classrooms for their students. The next suggestion would be something in music or music education. Again, there are many blind musicians and music educators. I am one of those people. I've been working in the music education sphere for 15 years. I find it incredibly rewarding. I love working with students. I love working with kids and finding a passion and giving them something that really makes them feel good about themselves. The next career option would be something in massage or manual therapies. It's almost entirely touch-based. You do have to do some charting, you do have to handle intake forms, but again, most of that is online and completely accessible to somebody no matter their visual loss. The next option would be something in counseling or psychology. It's entirely talk-based therapy. While you may not be able to read body language, there is no reason you can't be a successful therapist. I know many blind and low vision therapists who have had really illustrious careers and helped a lot of people. The last three I'm going to jump through very quickly, and that is research at the university or post-secondary level. Again, it's a lot of reading, so if you're adept at using a screen reader or you're able to use magnification software, no problem. Very little lab work actually involves being in a lab doing wet work, working on a bench, especially if you're in the humanities or spheres outside of the sciences. The last two would be accounting and law. Very much study-based, do require a significant education behind them, but are completely accessible to somebody who is blind or low vision. I know many blind accountants and many blind lawyers. And while those careers are generally hassle-free for somebody who's blind or low vision, they might be more or less challenging to somebody with a different disability. While that's a short list of what I think is easily accessible to people who are blind or low vision, that does not mean that there aren't blind chefs or doctors or mechanics or carpenters. The only thing that I feel is truly limiting is trying to find ways to accommodate your visual differences. That doesn't mean you can't do them, it just means you might have to find workarounds that don't exist yet. It doesn't mean that they're impossible.
Disability interview tips.
Now let's get on to the section where we talk about some general interview rules and tips. In many countries, particularly those in North America, it is illegal for an employer to ask about your specific disability. Many employers can ask if you have a disability, but cannot ask for details about your disability or what's required to accommodate your disability. Where I live in Canada, there are many government grants available to employers to help offset the cost of accommodating someone's disability. Something else that I feel is an unspoken rule in the interviewing or when you're looking for work or actively seeking out employment is to look the part. And what I mean by that is to make sure that your hair is well kempt, make sure that you're clean, that you are wearing deodorant, make sure that you have on something that portrays that you are a professional person. One of the rules that I have always heard when interviewing is dress one step above what you would be expected to wear in the office every day. And if you don't know what that means, or if you're not sure what the dress code is for a specific place of employment, a suit is never a bad idea. If you're a person who identifies as male, a suit and tie, a button-down shirt, very professional. For ladies, again, button-down shirt, a skirt or pants with a blazer, very professional. Taking a few extra minutes to dress up tells the employer that you care to be a part of their community or that you care about their business and you want to be an active participant. Looking the part will absolutely help you get a job. The next part that I think is equally important to discuss is when to disclose disability and what accommodations are necessary. It's a very delicate balancing act in many situations, and it will be different depending on the type of interview that you have. If your disability is very obvious, i.e. you come in with a wheelchair, you use a white cane, you use a guide dog, you will probably need to disclose your disability or at least address the disability fairly early on in the interview, because an employer might be sitting there wondering about what you're capable of or how you're going to do the job rather than actually thinking about how you're going to be an asset to their company or thinking about the actual interview process. So usually what I'll do when I sit down for an interview is I'll reach out my hand, I'll say, "Hi, how are you?" Sit down, exchange any pleasantries that they have, and say, "Before we get started, do you mind if I say something?" Or, "Before we get started, I'd like to address something that you're probably wondering about." And at that point, I will do my best to explain my disability. I will do my best to explain what happens, or most importantly, I will explain how I have accommodated for my disability in other work type situations. And if you don't have prior work experience, how you've accommodated or how you've needed to accommodate for your disability in volunteer settings or at school. Showing somebody that you already know how to do some of the job is going to help you. Say you were interviewing for some form of administrative position. I would say, "I have experience in administration, I've worked in administration for 10 years. In other offices, I've been able to work around their filing system by using my phone to read file names aloud. I've been able to work on the computer by using a screen reader. Whether you're using Macs here, I'll use VoiceOver, or if you're using a PC, I'll use JAWS. It won't cost you anything. There's grants available. If you don't have those on your computers, I totally understand. But I'm also happy to answer any questions you might have about my disability or about things that you're concerned about so that we can work together. And usually that will signal to an employer that you know what your disability is, you know how to manage your disability, and it's going to alleviate a lot of their anxieties, thinking that you might be a burden or not be able to do the tasks for that job. If I was doing a phone interview, I typically would not disclose my disability until the last moment or until an offer had been made. I find if you are in person in front of somebody, it's a lot easier to gauge their reaction. It's a lot easier to understand how they're taking that information and be able to explain better. In phone interviews, you may not know what's going on the other end of the phone. You might not hear them shuffling around. You might not hear different cues that you'd hear in person. On the phone, I'd say it's easier for them to dismiss what you're saying, but that would depend on the employer. Some employers are going to be more or less open to working with somebody with a disability. If you're doing a teleconference interview on Skype or Zoom or another type of video conferencing software, it can be that intermediary where it can be a little bit difficult. Maybe they won't understand. They could spend the entire interview thinking there's something wrong with you if you aren't looking directly at the camera, if you don't have proper body positioning. So I would probably disclose in a video interview as well so that you can try and alleviate those fears. But again, it is up to your personal discretion what you disclose and when you disclose. I've always been an upfront person, so I prefer getting it out of the way. And if they hate me, if they don't want me, that's fine. But at least I was able to say my piece first. This was a very long video and I tried to put in as much information as I could. But if you have extra questions, if you have other things that you'd like to ask me, leave those in the description down below. I will happily answer any questions you have about employment, finding employers, anything employment related. I know it can be a long journey and it can be a difficult journey, but don't give up. You will find an employer who cares about you, who is willing to accommodate you, even if it takes a long time. They do exist. There are good people out there who are willing to give people with disabilities a chance. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like content like this, please don't forget to subscribe, hit those bells and buttons, leave me comments, let me know what you'd like to see next. If you have questions about what I talked about today, leave those in the comments down below. I'm happy to answer them. If you want to keep up to date with what's going on in between uploads, I have an accessible Twitch stream Sunday nights and some Tuesdays, 7:30 Mountain Standard Time, and you can check out my other social media accounts linked in the description down below. Bye for now.